So for our Tudor Rose, you will need some gilt, ladybird, cream and grass. And we're going to do this with the 4mm hook. You'll need your scissors, and a stitch marker will be really handy, and I'll show you why in a minute. So we're going to start with the gilt, and this is the very centre of your Tudor Rose. So make a slip knot. And chain 3, and this is just like the start of the granny square initially, so we're going to turn that into a loop, and you're all experts at this now because you've made lots of them. And I'm now going to make some double crochet stitches into that ring, so it's double crochets this time instead of treble crochets like the granny squares. I'm going to make my first double crochet, and this stitch, when we work round, likes to hide. So to make sure that we can find it when we've been all the way around with our stitches, I'm just going to pop a stitch marker into that one so I don't have to hunt for it. And then I'm going to make 9 more double crochet into that ring, so we have 10 in total. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One more. That's 10. Oh. And then I'm just going to take the stitch marker out, and I'm going to slip stitch under both loops of that first stitch. And I can fasten off, and that is the centre of my Tudor Rose. So at this point, it's a good idea to just sew in your tails because they do tend to get in the way. So I'm just going to sew that tail in. I'm just going to pull my centre tight and sew in this tail. And I just find it easier to sew them in rather than having them all hanging down like little tentacles and getting in the way of my stitches. So I'm going to snip that off. So here's my centre, and I'm now going to use the cream to make the next round of my Tudor Rose, and I'm going to join cream in any of the 10 double crochet stitches by pulling up a loop. And I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to skip a stitch. So I'm going to skip this next stitch and double crochet in the next stitch, and then chain 2 again, and skip a stitch, double crochet in the next stitch, chain 2, skip a stitch, chain 2, skip a stitch and double crochet into the next stitch. It's being a little bit stiff. There we go, double crochet and then chain 2, and I've got 1 stitch left here. I'm going to skip that one, and I'm not going to do a slip stitch join. I'm going to go straight into the next round by making a double crochet in that first chain 2 space, and this is the start of my petals. And all of the petals are the same. They are made up of a double crochet, so that's my first one, a half treble, a treble, and then I'm going to go back down again, so a half treble and then a double crochet. And I'm going to repeat this for all the petals around. So in the next chain 2 space, double crochet, half treble, a treble, half treble and a double crochet. So last petal, it's my half treble, my treble, half treble, final double crochet, and then I'm just going to pop my hook under the 2 loops of that first double crochet and fasten off. And there are my 5 petals in cream. I'm just going to get my tails out of the way. And the next round of the Tudor Rose is grass, and we're going to make both sets of leaves at the same time. So our Tudor Rose has its inner set of leaves and then the outer set that stick out round the edge, and we're going to do both of them at the same time. I'm going to join the grass into the top of one of the petals, and it's the 3rd stitch along. So the first one is the double crochet, the second one is the half treble crochet, and I'm going to join grass into the top of the treble. So pop my hook in, pull up a loop, and this time I'm going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to work a new stitch here, and this is a treble 2 cluster stitch, and I'm going to work it in between the 2 double crochet. So there's a little space between the double crochets, and that is where I'm going to work my cluster stitch. So to work the stitch, yarn over, pop the hook in and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And then I'm not going to complete this stitch, I'm going to work another one in the same space. So that's yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook, and that makes your cluster stitch. So I'm now going to chain 3 again. And I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the treble crochet again. So that's the 3rd stitch along. That's my slip stitch. And now I'm going to form the outer leaf. So I'm going to chain 5, and these leaves are actually the same as the leaves that we did in the purple and gilt section on the edge of the blanket. So I'm going to chain 5, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to skip the stitch at the end of the chain. So skip the first chain, I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch, half treble into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, and then slip stitch into the last one, and that forms my little leaf. And I'm now going to chain 3, so I'm now going to repeat around. So I will have treble 2 cluster stitches in the dips between the petals, between the 2 double crochets, and I will have the leaves on the bumps of the petals, so worked into that middle treble stitch. So here's my last treble 2 cluster stitch, and then chain 3, and I'm just going to slip stitch in and make my final leaf. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my slip stitch. My double crochet, and then my last slip stitch. And fasten off, and here is my leaf centre. So I've got my 5 leaves sticking out around the edge and my 5 leaves around the inner edge. The last round of our Tudor Rose is Ladybird, and I'm going to join my Ladybird to the right hand side of any of the treble 2 cluster stitches. I'm going to pull up a loop and chain 2, and this counts as our first half treble crochet. So in the same space I'm going to make 3 treble crochet stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to work in front of the leaf. So I'm just going to pop the leaf behind, and I'm going to work 3 more treble crochets in the next chain space. So I'm jumping across the leaf with the leaf behind, and I'm going to work 3 treble crochets into the next space. And then I'm going to work a half treble to finish off that petal. And that just gives nice curved edges to the petals. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the treble 2 cluster stitch, and you can see that there's 1 stitch at the top because we've crocheted those 2 together. So I'm just going to pop the hook in and slip stitch into there, and that finishes the edge of our petal. And now I'm just going to repeat that all the way around the flower. So half treble, 3 trebles, and then jump across in front of the leaf and go the other way. So we've got 3 trebles followed by a half treble. And slip stitch into the top of that cluster stitch. So here's my last petal. So that's 2 and 3 treble crochet, work in front of the leaf, and 1, 2, 3 treble crochet, a half treble, and then to finish off I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of my cluster stitch, snip off, and fasten. And here is my completed Tudor Rose with its outer ring of leaves and its inner ring of leaves. So here is my completed Tudor Rose, and I'm just going to show you how to attach it to the centre of your blanket. I'm going to line up the centre of the Tudor Rose with the very centre of the granny square. And it's really helpful if you can just pop a pin or 2 in to just keep it in place. So I'm just going to pop a pin here and another pin here. You could also use stitch markers to do this, or safety pins, if that's what you've got to hand. So my rose is safely attached to the middle. And I'm now going to start sewing down the leaves. We're not going to sew down the petals, that's what gives it the 3D effect. But we're going to sew down the leaves, and we're going to pull them out so we get little points at the ends of the leaves. So I'm just going to join my green yarn on the back of one of my leaves. Just pull through a couple of times to join it. And then I'm going to take my yarn to the very tip of the leaf. And this is the skipped stitch, the skipped stitch at the very tip of the leaf. And this is the same stitch as we picked up on the gilt leaves with the hook. So it's that very end stitch. And I'm going to use it to pull the leaf out into a point. So I'm just going to catch the top threads of the stitch, my crochet stitch underneath. And this is so that it doesn't show through on the other side. So I'm just going to go back into the end of the leaf and just pull that out into a point. So now I'm going to go back into the leaf and then pick up just the top of a stitch on my granny square and pull tight, and then go back into my leaf and pick up just the top thread of my granny square again. So I'm sewing down my leaf, but the stitches are not coming through on the other side. And now I'm just going to work round, so going into the leaf, and then you're just lining it up with the granny square underneath. And I'm going to work to the bottom of the leaf, just those top threads. So I've made my last stitch into the bottom of the leaf, and I'm just going to slip the needle through the red stitches to get my green yarn to the next leaf so I can carry on sewing it down. And I'm just going to catch the top of that leaf with my green yarn and then catch the top of the stitches on my granny square again, so you can't see it on the other side, and pull, and then I'm just going to work through the back of those stitches again to get my yarn to the next leaf. And then I'm going to carry on in exactly the same way, working round the leaf and pulling the end out into its lovely little point. And when you've finished working all the way around, this is my blanket. And you can see that the leaves are all pulled out into their little points, and we have our petals sticking up, and it gives us this lovely 3D effect. And this is exactly the same in the corner of the blanket. I've done exactly the same thing here, so we have this 3D effect with the petals, and the leaves are all stitched down so it's firmly attached to the blanket.